ready? It's the Roundtable with me, Robert Bannon.
All right, our next guest is a writer, a director, a stuntman. I'm scared because he's no joke. You want to talk about, holy moly, he's been in some of the movies that you've loved and adored, and he's got a brand new movie that's coming out. I cannot wait to talk all about it. Ladies and gentlemen, Jesse V. Johnson is here. Welcome.
Thank you very much for having me.
I am so fascinated. I was reading your bio, which is pages and pages and movies that we have all grown up with and loved. Some of the greatest movies that have ever been made. And you started in this business in 1990 as a stunt performer in Total Recall?
I started a little earlier than that, to be honest. But yeah, I mean that might be one of the earlier ones. Yeah.
What made you decide and have the courage to get involved in stunt performing of all things?
It wasn't necessarily courage. That would be quite an overstatement. At the time, it was survival and paying bills and things like that. Really, my start was a little earlier. Around about 15 years old, I carried stunt bags for Vic Armstrong, who's my uncle. I was very lucky to do that on the Young Indiana Jones. No, that was on Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade. I apologize. And it was really walking onto the set at Elstree and seeing the tank on the gimbal, Sean Connery in there, Denham Elliott, and watching that sequence sort of take place and being shot, and the way that the mystery of the inside of this tank was created on a pneumatic gimbal with smoke and fireworks and dust, and it was so intoxicating and so beguiling and so mesmerizing. It's a love that I still get when I see an action sequence being put together. It's difficult to articulate for those that haven't been there and seen it, but it's sort of like seeing how, a young magician watching how an expert magician does his tricks early on in their career and it leaving an indelible mark on them that affects them for the rest of their life. That would be the most sort of easy to grasp metaphor. And from that point, it became just about wanting to make movies, whatever it took to make movies. And so I was a PA for a little while. I did a film called Hellbound, which was Hellraiser Part 2. Nightbreed, I did in the UK, Getting It Right with John Gielgud and Peter Cook and those kind of people. And then sort of moved to, made a move out to the US very, very sort of gradually over about 6 month, year-long period, which sort of started with Total Recall, which I was lucky to get on for a little while, and then arriving in the US with about $1,000 and just trying to figure out how to keep your head above water. So what that involved for me at the time was having 3 or 4 resumes and just going from production office to production office to production office and whatever they needed. Oh no, it's okay. We don't need any art department. He said, that's fine because I'm actually a location scout. We don't need any location scouts. That's good because I'm really good in the office. I can type and. It was a group of us who were all in our, late teens, early 20s, who basically just had all the energy, nothing to lose. And the guys that were there at that time, one of them is now producing Star Wars. He produced Ron Bergman, who did Star Wars and some of the Glass Onion and those pictures. Another guy that was there at that time was Simon Manuel, who produced the last Indiana Jones movie and Batman. So, I mean, they've all gone, they've done a lot better than I have, but the point is, it's that spirit. I don't know if you can still do it that way. I really don't. I have 2 daughters breaking into the business, and my 22-year-old said it just doesn't work like that. It's become everything's taking place around the world now as opposed to just Los Angeles. So maybe I caught the tail end of that wonderful dream.
It's so funny to hear you talk like that. I had just done an interview. We just had Steve Guttenberg on, and Steve Guttenberg was talking about having a fake office on a lot and sneaking in every single day to try to get in. The ways of that time to try to backdoor figure out a way to get in. But you kind of grew up with a love, and you now a family, a part of the business as well.
A little bit of family involved. They were very helpful to me, but that gets you so far as I'm sure you can imagine.
For sure. Well, from Lincoln to Thor to Aviator to Mission Impossible 3 to Galaxy Quest, Amazing Spider-Man. I mean, movies and movies. And then at some point, you decide to write and direct your own pictures. Was that always the goal? Was the dream?
Absolutely. Every stage of the way, I'm writing like mad. I still have notebooks from when I was on Shawshank Redemption as a PA, the lowest of the low, I was dressed as a prisoner and I had my walkie-talkie hidden inside my jacket, and we would basically help with the organization of the multiple extras. But I have notebooks, reams of notes of my talking to because they used real cons. They brought in ex-cons from Mansfield State Correctional Center via the halfway houses and parolees services and that sort of thing. So they actually brought people who had at one point been prisoners in that jail, because the faces and the teeth and the look in the eyes and the way that a real con looks was something that they wanted. And they did really, really great work, extras casting on that picture. And I talking to these guys was fantastic. And I got, as I say, reams of sort of interesting notes for scripts. And I was writing like crazy from an early age. That's what you have to do. I think you have to just write, you write your first script, you think it's wonderful, you read it 2 weeks later and you realize you don't know anything.
Yes.
You just keep doing it and doing it.
And at what point were you able to make your first film that you wrote? And what was that experience like to see it on screen?
It's an interesting thing. I mean, you still do it now. You make shorts. In those days, we did pitch reels. Pitch movies. It's like a miniature trailer for a film that you want to come out. So I was doing those right from before I'd actually broken back into stunt work. I was doing those because I went. There's a long period, about 5 years, where I was determined to try and make it as an assistant director, anything other than stunts, which I felt was almost a sort of a family thing, and I didn't want to be reliant upon family. I wanted to show I could cut my own teeth as an AD. And I also thought that might be a better way to get into directing. I learned very differently after about 5 years of doing that. But while I was doing that, I was making short films, these pitch reels, sizzle reels, they call them, and writing like crazy, self-financed. Any extra money I had, I'd take the gang out, we'd go and film, we'd borrow a camera, we'd put something together. And it's a fantastic learning experience because you learn the nuts and bolts of directing and framing. That's a given. If you love movies, you're going to have that sewn into your DNA anyway. But what you learn is what people don't respond to when they see the sizzle, and they're like, you can see them, moving in the chair and looking over, and they start checking their watch or whatever, and you've lost them. And if you can't keep their attention for 2.5 minutes, you're in big trouble. Mm-hmm. So you would, out of that process of making short films, I found it very, very rewarding and informative and an educational experience, because you learn what it was visually that catch, story-wise, that catches people's attention. I did a film called Mortal Kombat as an AD. It's one of the last ones I did before segging into stunts properly. And on that film, I met a actor called Dominic Vandenberg, who desperately wanted to be a lead actor. He had some money put aside from fighting and mercenary work, I think. And so we chatted and came up with a short film that won some awards, which was called Death Row: The Tournament. It got written up by Total Film in the UK, which is rather a wonderful and strange thing, because it suddenly put all these, went out to an enormous amount of people. I mean, a global audience that were trying to contact me. And these days, this was just pre-internet becoming as popular as it is now. If that's a world that's even imaginable, the magazine was the equivalent of a fantastic sort of hit on YouTube, and we got lots and lots of calls over that, Dominic and I, and from that we went into a very, very low budget feature, and the rest is history, really. It was an exciting sort of way to start out.
The rest is history, and if you look you up on IMDb or you look up your history, there's many movies that you've now directed and written, sometimes just directed, sometimes just, it's an amazing lineup. And this June, right now, coming up very shortly, your latest picture will be available wherever you stream or in select theaters and wherever you stream movies on demand. Tell us a little bit about One Ranger, please.
One Ranger was something I wanted to make for a long, long time. I mean, I watched a picture, TV show called McCloud on my granddad's lap. I was growing up. Dennis Weaver was a cowboy in London, and New York. I'd loved Don Siegel's picture, Coogan's Bluff, which was about an Arizona Ranger coming to the San Francisco of the 1970s. Brannigan with John Wayne when he was a Chicago cop coming to London. It's the fish out of water. I also find something inherently American about the cowboy, the Old West. I adore it. I love it. I love the mythology of it. I love the mythology of the Texas Rangers. I love the fact that you have guys who are absolutely, with state-of-the-art modern law enforcement agency that have to wear a uniform that is basically something from the 1890s. The cowboy hat, the Stetson, the gun belt, the way it's cut with two belts and a second belt for the gun. These were fashions that were fashionable in 1885. The cowboy boots, the Wranglers, the shirt, the button, which is made from a reversed 10 peso coin. And cut out, obviously the ones they wear now are not, but the original one was formed by hammer on a Mexican coin. And there's something innately romantic about this, not holding hands on the beach romantic, but romantic in the sense of poetry and in the essence of Americana and what it is, why America is different to every other country, why your mythology, your Greek Homeric Odyssey is the American West of the, post-Civil War era, cowboys and Indians and lawmen and bad guys. This is your mythology. And at some point, you go through 10 years cycles of loving it or hating it, but this is the mythology that everything is based on. And it represents a time that was, in our minds, freer and simpler. Of course, it was just as complicated then to live as it is now, maybe in many ways more complicated if you came from the wrong skin color or sect. But give it, love it, hate it, loathe it, wish there was some other truth. There isn't. This is American mythology. And to have this cowboy, who I love, land in a country that is slightly different to his way of thinking, and they look at him and think of him one way, I thought it was exciting. I thought it was a wonderful, basis to start an action movie on. I'd wanted to make an action movie that dealt with two good guys in the lead. I'd made a lot with anti-heroes who were bad guys who had their own complex moral compass, but I wanted to try something where I had two guys that were a guy and a girl that were lawmen, that were basically for the benefit of mankind. They walk very close to the edge, but they don't overstep it. And I thought that was important for me and my growth as a storyteller as well. I've spent a lot of time with debt collectors and mercenaries and killers and hunters and people who were morally questionable. So it was fun to do this, and then to pit them against two bad guys, Declan McBride, who's an IRA terrorist who's basically on the run, and his major domo, sort of aide de camp, right hand man, played by Jess Loudon, Oleg, and who have their own very complex, who are more like the heroes of my other movies, more complex and dark, and pit these two against each other. It's a buddy movie, but it's two buddies. We've got the bad guys are about, an odd couple, and we've got the good guys who are an odd couple. And I thought that was sort of fresh and interesting.
Yes, I love that idea. It spins on its head. Cowboy Western movies are literally one of the oldest forms of entertainment in the movie industry, and they don't make good Western movies like this anymore, Jesse. And
before Westerns, it was the yellow press. It was Pulp Fiction. It was the books that were written by the likes of Ned Buntline and people like that. So it is your oldest form of real literature. Even Mark Twain. If you take it, it's ingrained into the American West. It is America. I love it.
You don't have a slouch of a cast here at all. I mean, Thomas Jane, John Malkovich. I mean, you're talking about a wonderful group of actors. How did you find them? What did they say when you reached out to them? How did we get them on the project? Tell us a little bit about it.
So lucky. You're so right. I got so lucky with this cast. Director's only as good as his cast. Your casting is 80. John Huston said 80% directing is casting. I would default and say even more. The higher percentage. These guys were great. Thomas is wonderful. Have I blacked out? Is that just? Thomas is wonderful. I had known him and his producer, Courtney Penn, for some time. We've been looking for projects. We talked about 2 or 3 others. This one started to get financing, started to get traction, as they say here. A financer was interested. Thomas, I took it to because I'd been to his house. I'd seen the pictures of Western movies and Americana that he collects and enjoys and reads. Very, very erudite, very intelligent human being. And so I took the script to him, and he liked it. He responded to it, and really, it was quite quick once it started moving. The wonderful people at Lionsgate, Lauren and Adam, got behind it. They needed one other name. I knew John Malkovich from White Elephant, a picture I'd done directed shortly before this one. And so we sent the script to him. He responded to it. And at that point, we're sort of on the go. Everyone else, that was enough to trigger it. So the rest were people like we chose. Dominic Tipper, I think we got very lucky with, who plays Agent Smith. That was through Thomas Newbert, through The Expanse, the TV show they'd done together. We knew we needed someone that could keep up with him. Wasn't going to be intimidated by him. Wasn't going to be intimidated by the amount of action, gunplay, fighting. Props and dialogue is a really difficult thing to do. She has tons of exposition. To be able to do exposition, but also dismantle a wolf at PPK and put this prop over there and take that prop out, it's really difficult. It is so difficult. I love actors because they make it look so simple and wonderful, and she's brilliant. And then my two bad guys, I'd known Dean Jagger for some time. I knew I wanted to work with him after seeing him in Game of Thrones and Warrior. I thought he was just brilliant in those and brought something fresh and interesting and different. I like the bone structure of his face. He looks like the guys I knew when I knew people, in special forces and bare knuckle fighters. I mean, he looks like an old world action star from films from like the 50s and 60s, when they used guys that had become actors on the GI Bill. They didn't come out of acting school. They hadn't played the leads in their school plays. Right. These guys were looking to get laid, and so they used the GI Bill to go into acting lessons. And you have faces like Lee Marvin, Charles Bronson, Steve McQueen, James Garner, who have these Coburn. They have these wonderful mugs, but it's because they did military service. Had this opportunity to bum around for a couple of years, being paid by their service, and they chose acting. And we have this whole generation of movies that look like they are real guys, real humans. Now, I'm not saying we don't have that now. We've got some actors with good faces, but these are the kids we have in our movies now were the ones that were told they were pretty, that played in the school play at school. They learned dancing. They learned how to do ballet, to be a tree, and they went through all of that, and that makes them a great actor. But they have a certain countenance to them. Dean Jagger is an ex-bare knuckle fighter and a skateboarder. He has a face that looks like that. He's also an extraordinarily accomplished actor. So I like people like that. He reminded me of those older generation of actors. So I threw him in. Jess Liaudin was cast. I love what he does with the part. I saw a film he'd done where he was playing a heavy, but he had a particularly sympathetic performance that he gave. He was very gentle, and I think the most dangerous human beings you'll ever run into will speak softly and gently to you. They're the ones you've got to be terrified of. It's right. And yelling and pushing people around and he's flexing his muscles. Those guys, that's movie stuff. The guy you've got to be terrified of is the guy that gently puts his arm around your shoulder and whispers in your ear. In my experience.
I completely understand. And as an actor who has been a tree and has learned ballet, I understand what you're saying, because there's
I have no problem with it at all, but I'm talking about the
No, Jesse, I'm telling you, you're never going to cast me as the bad guy to ride a horse and shoot a gun. I just don't have that sensibility. To find somebody to be able to do that is so in these days, that's the grit and the truth.
By the way, I may be talking completely out the side of my mouth. I'm sure Dean Jagger would make a great tree, and I think he'd make a fantastic ballet dancer as well.
I'm sure he is, absolutely. And that's the beauty of art and artists, and your direction and your writing transforms these artists into these characters, and then we get to enjoy them every single weekend or night or evening or whenever we sit and watch the films that you make. I want to say before we go on that just remember that starting on June 13th, you can stream it on demand in select theaters, One Ranger. So when you go home, it could be a Friday night, you can order a pizza, you could hit a button, and
I think also June 13th we come out in physical.
Right, okay.
Yeah, I think we have been out and streaming for a little while. We were in theaters and it was a fantastic run. We are now physical media on June 13th, which is Blu-ray and DVD. And really, I highly recommend it because they got a company to do a behind the scenes, which is not available online, which is on the hard, on the physical media. And it's really a good behind the scenes. I've begged them to give it to me so I can put it up on my social media, but they're trying to hold it off until, obviously it's one of the perks of the physical media,
All right, so wherever you get your Blu-ray, your DVDs, get them, order it June 13th, they'll be out, and stream it. Stream the movie at the least At the least, Jesse, stream the movie.
Thank you, Robert. I appreciate that.
How often do you come up with new ideas? What's cooking? Do you already have written another script? You have a pile of scripts ready to go?
I have a pile of scripts. It's a tricky time right now because we have a writer strike going on, so I have to be very, careful. I don't want to offend anyone there or cross any lines. But I have pictures in development, which I'm very lucky to. For the last few years, it's been one picture after another, which I just love doing. I have a film called Chief of Station, which is in post with Aaron Eckhart and Olga Kurylenko, which is about spies. It's a real throwback to sort of Cold War thrillers of the 1960s, which I love. Pictures like The Spy Who Came In From the Cold and the early Bond films. So it was really a joy making it. There's that one. And then I have a film coming out at the end of this year called Boudica, which was a passion project with Olga Kurylenko playing the title role of Boudica, who basically 2,000 years ago was the first leader to unite all of the British tribes. And there was no Britain. There was just about, several dozen separate tribes of Celts, and she united them together to fight the Roman colonists, who were a pretty awful bunch and were really, really quite despicable and beyond description. What we show in the movie is it's violent, but it's far less violent than what the Romans actually did. But it's an incredible movie, and Olga is just sensational in it. It's a transformation film. We see a woman who's a mother and a gentle soul turned into this stone cold killer. And when I say it's a transformation, it's pretty impressive. So that's coming out at the end of the year through Saban, and I'm very excited about that. But really thrilled about the way that One Ranger has been received, and we have been asked to put together a sequel. So that's coming together for that, which will be coming shortly. And so there's a bunch of exciting stuff going on. Hopefully, I'll be going to Europe fairly soon and rolling up my sleeves on another sort of adventure. But being Irish and terribly over superstitious, I tend not to talk about the ones that haven't shot yet, because they, you inevitably jinx yourself and find yourself doing something else instead.
I understand. Well, as an Irish from one to another, I want to encourage everybody, stay up to date everything that Jesse's writing and doing. You looking for pure cinematic entertainment fun with great acting, great action, and a great story, then make sure you stream One Ranger now. Buy it, the physical copy coming out next week. And stay up to everything that he's doing. Make sure you check out all the projects that's to come. We're here for all of it. Thank you for sharing the insight into what goes into making these big films that we enjoy, and also inspiring us with your journey and how the road and the levels that you went through and the hard work you put in to get where we are. It inspires us all. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Robert. Really appreciate it. Very, very smart questions, and it's been a joy talking to you.
A pleasure. I appreciate you so much. Thank you, Jesse.